let's get the obvious out of the way, because as soon as somebody hears it's a self-service bar, all of the challenges come into play. So walk me through again, what happens when I walk into a Hoppin bar, and how does everything get policed?
Yep. So the challenges are actually, I've always said the self-serve aspect actually eliminates 95% of a typical bar owner's headaches. And for many reasons that I'll explain throughout this podcast. But when you walk into a Hoppin, you're greeted by our staff. They provide a good experience. They have fun. They joke around. They'll ask you for your ID, make sure you're legal age, a credit card or a debit card to open up a tab, and they will hand you an RFID wristband with your credit and debit card back and your ID. Once you are checked in, they'll take you over to the glass shelves. You'll be able to pick any glassware that you want. They'll explain the entire space to you. You'll be able to scan your wristband and pour 1/10 of an ounce all the way to a full glass. And that's beer, wine, cider, seltzers. Some states that is legal, we can do full cocktails on tap.
Okay, wow. And so there is a limit, right? Just like you walk into a bar, there's a 2-drink maximum per time you go up, right?
Correct. So when you reach that limit, our screen on our technology will tell you, hey, you exceeded your limit. It'll have a little joke on there. Find one of our staff members. Our staff members will, one, check that you're, able to drink more, that you're not intoxicated, and we have to tell you to go to the water tap. And then if you're able to drink more, they'll scan their card. You'll scan your wristband. Within 2 seconds, you have another 2 drinks. So the actual aspect of one-on-one and making sure individuals are not intoxicated or overly intoxicated is safer with our system than it is with a busy bartender that has 20 or 30 people deep and really isn't paying attention to see if people have drank too much. So it's a one-on-one experience compared to 20 people deep at a bar and you're just kind of waving the bartender down to get a drink.
Sure. Now, I was on your website and I understand this really is about the experience. This isn't like a self-service yogurt place where you're going to get your, in this case, your beer and leaving, or just drinking and heading out. You really try to create an atmosphere that is fun for people. You want them to hang around. You want them to play some games. So why don't you talk to me a little bit about what differentiates yourself and your brand? Because I think you've got something that's really different here.
Yeah. Overall, the experience from our staff, right? They're there to provide you an experience from the moment you walk in, when you're at the tap wall, when you're ordering cocktails, when they're coming around picking up drinks. They're always joking, they're always having fun. So the service aspect is completely different than your traditional bar, right? You just walk into a bar, you go to the bar and you order a drink. Hopefully you can get through the crowd to find a bartender to get a drink. So that aspect is different. And then on the flip side, we have, slower days, we have games. We'll do trivia on Tuesdays, music bingo on Wednesdays, and then we have board games, Uno. We have a huge Scrabble board on every one of our walls, so you can play Scrabble, which is always fun to see what people leave on our Scrabble board after a Saturday night. Upstairs or anywhere in the tap room, we have dart boards. Outside, we're usually going to have a putting green and cornhole boards. So overall, the environment is fun. It's interactive. The staff is always going to be in tune. Every time you come back, they're going to joke with you, whether you've come for one time or you brought a friend and they have fun with you that way. So the experience overall is great. The environment is completely different. It's not a dark bar or a dark brewery. When you walk in, it's very light, a lot of white walls, greens. And then on the weekends, we'll do live music or DJs. So some of the typical bar things, but the music that we choose and the things that we choose keep people there and make them want to come grab a drink with us.
Nice. Rich, what inspired you to create this? I wanted to kind of take me back to that day, that aha moment. You went, I've got it. This is what I'm going to do. Why did that happen? When did that happen?
Yeah, so it's funny. I've always told people I've never really had all the companies I've owned and exited. I've never had the idea. The idea always came from somebody else. So one night, a friend of mine at the time said, hey, would you invest in a bar? It was like 11 o'clock at night. And I hung up. I said, there's no chance I'm investing in a bar. I don't go out. I really don't drink that much. It's just casual with my wife or friends every once in a while. The next day, he sent me a video of the technology, and I quickly changed my mind because I saw an opportunity to open up something that was completely different. I've always said from day one, we don't have to be different. We don't have to be better. We have to be different. And the technology was different in itself. Our environment is completely different. Our staff and our culture is completely different. So that was the aha moment when I saw the technology, and I knew that it would eliminate a lot of the headaches that I was worried about.
Wow. So going back though, this was not your first rodeo in business. And I think that's kind of key for the audience to hear. Before though, I understand you were a PGA professional at 22 years old.
Yeah, so I went to college for golf, got in the golf industry, became a Class A, basically a club professional and teaching professional. So I did that for 6.5 years before I realized that I was on the wrong side of the county.
And then, okay, so what was your first company that you started?
I got into sales after the golf industry, and sales gave me the ability and the know-how of if I can sell, I can do anything. If I can sell, I can find somebody smarter than me to do the things that I'm selling.
There you go.
And I found a niche in the construction world. In Charlotte, it was booming, and I started with just pressure washing. So I was selling other contractors work, and then I was subbing out. So I was just a broker of services. And I quickly ramped that up from $0 to 1.8 million the first year, 3.6 million the second year, and then 6.5 million the third year. And in that 2 months into my fourth year, I ended up selling it for multi-millions. And
Nice.
that company is still thriving today in multiple states. So it's good to see your baby passed on and still doing well.
Absolutely. And then, so you opened another company called Two Scoops Creamery, I understand?
Yep. The summer before I sold my first company, one of my best friends, again, the idea came from him. He's got a family recipe, homemade ice cream. His uncle's in Florida and St. Pete area. And he said, yo, would you be interested in investing in a homemade ice cream spot? And the upfront capital wasn't that much. And the ability to do something a little bit more fun where the customers were happy instead of my customers yelling at me every morning at 5 a.m. in the construction world. I said, yeah, I'll invest the money. You guys run the day to day. So two of my best friends till this date and two of the best partners that I could ever ask for run that. We have 6 locations with another 3 opening this year.
Wow, that's great. All right, so that brings us all the way to Hoppin now, right? So you launch Hoppin, you have your company-owned location. What ultimately made you decide that franchising was the right way for you to go? Because you didn't have franchise experience in your prior life, right?
I did not have franchise experience, and I wish I did, because franchising is an animal, especially being on the franchisor side. But I'm fortunate in Charlotte to have a lot of great franchisors to be able to reach out to, and everybody in the industry is great. So franchising, the idea was never there from the beginning. Obviously, I didn't know anything about it. We opened up our first location, and that first year was just booming. We poured 3.5 million ounces that first year. And while people were coming in from other states, they said, man, this branding is awesome. You guys are awesome. The experience awesome. How do we open these? Can we open a Hoppin in Florida? Can we open a Hoppin in Tennessee or Nashville, wherever it may be? And it started to get me think, like, how can we expand this without the upfront cost of trying to raise a ton of money and do it corporately? So I started to dive into the franchising in 2019, which was a couple of years after we opened. 2019 rolled around, started to work with my legal team for an FDD and get all that set up. 2020 came, quickly halted everything. It was just keep our head above water, make sure my staff was putting food on the table for the family. And at that point, I just put it on hold. And then 2022 came and I started that back up and we got everything rolling August, September of 2022.
Yeah, it takes a little while. Of course, none of us have many memories of 2021. We all remember 2020, but like it went like 2020 and then all of a sudden we all woke up in 2022.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
It was like 2 years later. So I'm not surprised. So when you started launching this franchise, I'm curious, did you bootstrap it? Did you seek outside investors? What were your thought process on getting this thing off the ground and really starting to expand this?
For the most part, it's been bootstrapped. I did bring in Martin Truex Jr., NASCAR driver, great friend of mine and silent investor. So he owns 25% of the brand. I own 75%. And most of his investment has gone to our other 2 locations corporately. And the rest of the investment is definitely stayed in. But the locations that we have kind of funded the franchising side. And we're getting to a point now where we might have to bring in more capital, whether if it's from me or him, or we bring outside investors for equity portion. But yes, bootstrap for the most part. I try and keep it lean and mean, and I hire people that, rather hire one killer than 3 people that are doing half-ass work.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.